Okay, welcome to another episode of Banking Without Borders. Today we're going to be doing our monthly recap for May, and there are a lot of interesting topics to discuss. We're going to start the show with Revolut. They've just launched ATMs. They're going to be starting out in Spain, and I know ATMs might sound like a really mundane and boring topic, but trust me, this is Revolut, and this is really interesting. There's going to be a very, very, very unique approach to ATMs and some really surprising things, and I can't wait to show you what they look like as well. They look really futuristic. We'll also talk about mobile phone plans, so not eSIMs, but Revolut are launching mobile phone plans now. Some interesting things happening there, and we've got some prices that will be introduced for the UK and Germany. We'll also look at Revolut's investment in France. They're going to be investing €1 billion, so we're going to look at what this could mean for customers in the EU, and also Revolut are now integrating RevPoints into their credit card system, starting with Ireland, and I want to share with you how much you can earn in terms of RevPoints from spending with your debit card and now your credit card, and which plan will earn more. And we're also going to look at complaints. Monzo, Revolut, Wise, and Starling have been racking up a lot of complaints here in the UK, and Jan and I are going to look at why this could be happening. And then finally, we're going to look at Starling Bank and the demise or the stagnation of Starling, because right now, things are slow. They're not growing as fast as Monzo or Revolut, and arguably they might be focusing on something else and ignoring their personal customers. And then we'll round up the episode with the latest interest rates here in the UK, and also a little bit of an update from Trading 212, who have actually changed their cashback offer. It's improved, and I'll talk you through that at the end of the show. But first, we're going to talk about ATMs. And Jan, how are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm doing great, Jonny. Thanks for the intro. A lot of exciting topics today. I would say let's get started. Let's jump right in with our first topic, Revolut ATMs.
Yeah, this is a really interesting one. A few months ago, there was a little spoiler with the image of the ATM. I'll put it up on the screen. Yeah, it's pretty impressive, Jan. I don't know if you've seen this yourself, but this thing is big. Right, it's got this huge screen on the front, looks kind of like a Windows operating system. At first I thought, what, ATMs? This is an innovation. We've had ATMs for years, and what could they possibly do? And my first initial thought was possibly some sort of biometric identification, so I could withdraw money with like Face ID or with like a fingerprint scan.
Yeah, so essentially Revolut just announced that they're launching 200 branded ATMs as part of a pilot program. 50 machines of these will be placed in Madrid and Barcelona at first, and then there will be 150 additional units across various other Spanish cities, among these Valencia and Malaga. And essentially, they choose Spain to kick this off due to its high reliance on cash. I believe over 60% of all transactions here are still made with cash, which is quite a lot. So it makes sense to launch these ATMs here. After some time, possibly in 2026, they will also expand this to Germany, Italy, and Portugal, possibly to other markets as well. But there are no current plans for the UK, and that's likely due to the fact that most of the payments in the UK are made cashless currently.
But there are other benefits that Revolut could gather from having ATMs, apart from being able to help their customers withdraw money. And this is something that I thought was quite interesting, was that they will offer this feature to non-Revolut customers as well. Those customers could then go to withdraw money using, let's just say, their HSBC debit card. And if they're in a foreign country, the Revolut ATM will present them with their current exchange rate that HSBC offer them. Revolut will then be able to offer their own currency exchange, their rate, and give that customer an option to choose between one or the other, which I think is a really interesting way of marketing Revolut and trying to persuade people to sign up. You'll also be able to use the ATM to sign up for Revolut, which is fascinating. So within minutes, you could open a Revolut account. So let's just say, you're an HSBC customer, you get shown an FX rate that your bank is offering you and it's terrible, and Revolut go, hey, if you sign up with us, you'll get this rate. We'll give you this rate now if you want it, but if you sign up now as well, you could have it in the future repeatedly.
One thing to maybe also emphasize is that they will be likely also earning then with the exchange rate margin. So if more people using the Revolut rate, there's also more in them for them short term. So remember how we criticized the Revolut rate for Revolut customers? That's just because there are better alternatives out there. But in the terms of DCC, dynamic currency conversion, and basically the the exchange rates that the ATM providers typically offer, I think the Revolut rate seems quite attractive.
Yeah.
It's way better,
Yeah.
right?
When I first saw this and I saw the mention of Revolut being able to offer dynamic currency conversion and showing you like your bank's rate versus their rate, my immediate thought was just Euronet. Those ghastly Euronet ATMs that littered all around the tourist hubs around the world. And I thought, good for you, Revolut. I hope that you can start to steal some of their market share, because those ATMs have been ripping people off for years and pretending to be convenient and useful, but in reality, they're just a way of tricking you into selecting an exchange rate that's got a terrible markup. So this is, I think, only a good thing for the consumer. Revolut customers as well, something that we haven't mentioned yet, will be able to withdraw from these ATMs fee-free from wherever you are in the world. And it'll be easy to find it because you know that Revolut will have a good map system, user interface within the app that will guide you to the ATM.
Yeah, Johnny, remember our discussion a few weeks ago where we basically came up with the conclusion that Revolut very likely has had very positive effects on the FX market, or the exchange rates that are offered to consumers from banks, right? Because they were one of the first that offered these super low exchange rates abroad. Basically, probably the only provider even when they first started this. So I hope this is actually gonna happen to the ATM market as well. It's about time, right? Because as you mentioned, there are these I would call them unfair players out there that try to trick consumers into paying exchange rates of 13, 14, 15, sometimes even 16% above the mid-market rate.
We've seen now that Revolut are about to launch mobile phone plans, I think starting in Germany and the UK. Interestingly, they won't be operating as a mobile network operator, so to speak. I think they call them MNOs, but they will be operating as an MNVO, mobile network virtual operator, which means that they'll be leasing infrastructure from the telecommunication companies. And I don't know how well that'll position them to upend the market like they've done with the FX market, like they'll potentially do with ATMs, because with ATMs, they're going to own the hardware. Mobile phone plans, and they're going to be leasing the infrastructure, so they're going to be piggybacking off networks, and I don't know where that will leave them. Have you seen what they're going to be offering the introductory rate for these mobile phone plans, Jan?
They will be offering 20 gigabytes of data volume in the UK and 40 gigabytes of data in Germany for £12.50 or €12.50 every month.
Yeah,
But the rate is only for the early signups. That's to be mentioned. So we don't really know what the price will be after this early sign-up period is over.
Yeah, I've signed up for that. I don't know about you. I've signed up for that, but I probably wouldn't actually go for it. I use O2 and I get 10 gigabytes of data. It's not the best, to be fair, but I only pay, I think, £8.50 a month.
Yeah, and here's the thing, Johnny. Like, how are they going to disrupt a market that's already fairly competitively priced? I don't think there's much to disrupt. So they have a very fair offer in place, probably really good for some consumers, but I don't see them being 30, 40, 50% cheaper than the competitors.
I agree. I don't really see what they can do. And I think that's the same thing with eSIMs as well. Like the eSIM market is also very saturated. I just don't see how that they can disrupt, especially when they're operating as a virtual network operator that's leasing the infrastructure. They're also at the behest of the network. So if the network fails, so say if they're leasing infrastructure, let's just say this is incredibly simple, but let's just say they're leasing from EE or O2 in the UK. If O2 goes down, if O2 has a problem, then Revolut's network will get hit as well.
Right, yeah, and that's actually a good point. I'm not sure about the UK, but at least in Germany, the networks, they're really different, right? And the coverage isn't that well in some areas. And I believe Revolut, they haven't disclosed the partners they're going to be working with yet. Especially if you live in rural Germany, you might want to wait for them to announce this, because if they decide to work with a partner that has a bad network coverage in your area, it's going to be a mess, right? You might be stuck with a plan that you're not going to use.
Having eSIMs and having mobile phone plans could be a little bit confusing for people, and Revolut are going to need to find a way to clearly differentiate the two, being like, this is your domestic plan, and if you're going to be traveling, this is your travel plan. But wait, why isn't my Revolut mobile plan good enough for travel? I've said this about Revolut in the past, when they released pet insurance, or when they at least gave you access to pet insurance through the app. I don't know if they do that anymore. I remember saying that I thought that, that was like Coca-Cola offering to sell like paracetamol. Like it doesn't.
I think they want to become your app for everything. That's their vision. They want to become a super app for all your finances. And yes, mobile phone plans, they're definitely part of your personal finances, right? A lot of people spend quite a sum of money every month on these. So it does make sense in my opinion. I see the vision here.
Yeah, but do you not see like what you said at the beginning about this? Like they can't undercut the main players. So if you can't offer a more competitive price, which they're not on that introductory offer, and that's the introductory offer, then who is going to get this?
Good point. Because look at all the other products that Revolut offers. Where are they actually offering the very best price out there? I don't think they do in most cases. So who's the ideal consumer
But they
for this
did.
product? I tell you who's the ideal consumer. It's a person that values convenience, that wants one app to handle everything. And I could see myself personally being that person because I spent so much time trying to manage different subscriptions and plans. And I wish, like, there were many moments where I wish that this would all be possible to handle through one single app.
Yeah, you might be right, Jan. I say might be. I'm still not convinced, and I'm just going to leave it and see how this plays out over time and look at Revolut's financial report for 2026, 2027 and see what they're reporting on in terms of the numbers of people that are getting phone contracts with them. I get the convenience argument, mate, but I'm still not convinced by this. And until it's cheaper than my O2 plan, I mean, I don't see a reason to sign up.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, that's your point of view. But consider, Johnny, we're in this tech bubble, right? Or this fintech bubble, where we're dealing with plans and prices and packages and credit cards and whatever every single day. So it makes sense that we're the ones who actually look at prices and compare them. Do most consumers do this? I don't know. I don't think a lot of people are very savvy with their money. I think they just spend it, and they might not have any idea even where they actually spend all the different amounts to. So time will tell, but I'm very bullish here. I do see Revolut succeeding with this product, and I'm curious also what other services they might launch in the future.
Interestingly, that they're launching this in the UK and Germany. You can sign up now on the waitlist. I believe it's still available. Europe is becoming a big point of call for Revolut. They're looking at $1 billion investment in France to establish a office in Paris, which will be like their Western Europe headquarters.
Makes sense from a commercial point of view. France is their biggest market within the European Union with around 5 million customers, and Revolut sees this market grow to about 10 million by the end of next year, and says that it could potentially reach 20 million by 2030. Wow. So it does make sense to invest into France.
20 million customers
by 2030, but they also want to have 100 million customers in total by 2030, I believe. So
the numbers, it's like a Jackson Pollock painting. It's just like throwing numbers around.
It's huge.
Like if you're talking about 20 million customers in France and you want 100 million by the end of 2030, you know, I don't believe that a fifth of your customers are going to be located in France alone at that rate.
They've been growing exponentially in all markets. So, I mean, if they predict this, I do see this happen.
Something that happened recently is the integration of RevPoints into the Revolut credit card in Ireland. The advantage to using the credit card over the debit card to earn RevPoints is actually quite significant if you have Revolut Metal. So if you're a Revolut Standard user, spending with your credit card or spending with your debit card won't earn you any more RevPoints, which I think is a big shame, Jan. If you're a Plus account holder, you can earn an extra half point per 10 euros using the credit card. If you're a premium account holder, you can earn an extra half point per 4 euros you spend. And the metal account holders get double the points when using their credit card.
I'd be curious, is anyone interested in learning more about Revolut credit cards? We could do a deep dive in one of the upcoming episodes. So in case you're interested, please just write it into the comments. Happy to cover this topic in detail.
Let's talk about these complaints, Jan. It's a really interesting article coming out of City AM. Basically, we're seeing a rise in complaints here in the UK from fintech customers. So let's talk like Starling, Revolut, Wise, Monzo. We're seeing a rise in complaints, and some of these fintechs are catching up with the establishment. So that's the likes of HSBC and Barclays who top the complaints graph. Revolut are one of the top banks for complaints here in the UK. You're talking 6,500 complaints. I think they have roughly 10 million customers here in the UK. So I don't think, in the context of looking at the customers versus complaints ratio, it's not too bad. But where I think it's quite interesting is actually going down and looking at how Revolut and Monzo, who have a similar amount of complaints, compare to Wise. And if you're someone that uses Wise as well as Revolut and Monzo, what's your experience like comparatively? Because Wise have a lot less complaints. And in fact, they went from 1,220 in the beginning of 2024 to just 945. And I'm curious to hear people's experiences because I'm a Wise business account holder and the service is fantastic. If I need to speak to anyone, I don't know if this is business versus personal, but I found business to be really useful. And I'm wondering, Jan, what your opinion on this is, and if you think that as a result of scale, Revolut and Monzo are actually sacrificing service.
The problem that these neobanks are facing is that they've been growing really fast, right? And customer service typically scales linearly, which doesn't pair well with exponential growth. Now they're on par with existing legacy banks, and that's actually a good sign because that means that they're not doing anything worse than existing legacy banks. It's definitely an area where they do need to improve.
I didn't realize that Monzo would be so high up there. I was quite surprised to see that. They offer a pretty good service. They are, growing exponentially as a result of organic referral growth, because people think or are very satisfied with Monzo. So, they barely spend that much money on growth and marketing.
We need to consider it just a small fraction of the amount of total users that these banks have, right? And therefore, how significant it really is, I don't know, to be honest, Jonny. There's just maybe one more topic here to mention. I believe there's a psychological component that could be a disadvantage for these digital banks because you can't just go into a physical branch and get your issue sorted, right? You could technically do this with a legacy bank. At least you think so, right? And that's not the case here. So those fintech banks, they do need to have a better customer service and they need to do everything in their power to be as trustworthy as possible.
Do you think people vent more as a result of not being able to go into a physical branch and have a go at someone who's working behind a desk?
Yeah, for sure. And that feels quite natural as well, right? Just imagine you have your account blocked, you're trying to call someone, you might not be able to reach anyone right away, but you're in a waiting line for a few minutes or who knows, maybe even half an hour, you get frustrated easily. At least with a legacy bank, I know, okay, in case something goes wrong, I could probably go into a physical branch, pull a number for the queue, and then just get my problem sorted there. Or at least I could try getting it sorted. I have someone to speak to, and that's an advantage.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Revolut and Monzo need to address the fact that customers are probably having a difficult time getting answers, getting through to someone. So they're taking I don't know, you could call it the drastic measure of complaining to the FOS just because they've had enough, they're fed up. But if they can reach those people, if they can speak to them, reassure them, try to solve their problem faster, then they'll have less complaints. Starling Bank aren't doing so bad in terms of complaints. They received 731, although that was up from 572 at the beginning of the year. So, okay, they're not doing quite as bad as Revolut or Monzo, but they are getting more complaints as well. I don't know, maybe that has something to do with the lack of innovation at Starling, because it feels right now like they're stalling. And this article from, you laughing at my segue.
Yeah.
Starling is stalling. Yeah, they are stalling. And there's this article from City AM, the rise and fall of a fintech darling. It's an interesting read, Jan. And it talks about how Starling, Monzo, and Revolut rapidly expanded. I mean, for the three of them up until probably 2023, 2024, but where Revolut and Monzo are racing ahead, Starling are spluttering. And I think if you're watching this now or listening to this now and you're someone that is actively, paying attention within the industry, or you use multiple banks and you like to test and switch, I think you probably would nod and agree when I say that Starling Bank are boring. they have become boring. They've not innovated. You know, I remember when they launched a new product, and you know what they launched, Jan, to absolute fanfare, as if it was, I don't know, a new pope, virtual cards. Like, it was like this big deal, and it was just virtual cards. And I genuinely believe Starling have just become very boring, and that is impacting their growth. So their profits dropped, but that did come as a result of operating costs increasing, and they had just modest revenue growth. Customer deposits at Starling haven't really grown that significantly over the past year. Customer numbers haven't really grown that significantly over the last year, just by 10% compared to Monzo's 31%. That's pretty poor. And I think, again, if you're watching this and you participate in this industry, I think you probably agree that Starling aren't really doing anything that interesting. And that's probably a lot to do with this SaaS product, Jan, that they're offering called Engine by Starling. And it's essentially like a white label banking product that, you know, someone who wants to open their own bank, digital bank, can lease from Starling. And it would appear that Starling are banking on this product.
I mean, if that makes sense from a business perspective, I don't know. You probably don't know it either. We're just too far away from knowing what's exactly happening within Starling in order to actually evaluate this. But
we do know, if we look at their financial report, that Engine by Starling grew by about 284, I think 284%. Right? And that only brought in 8.7 million, but that is significant growth. So that does tell us that there's a signal there that this Engine by Starling could actually be incredibly lucrative.
And there are other banks out there that are doing essentially just that. In the European Union, there's the Solaris Bank, very similar product. They purely focus on outsourcing their banking license, essentially, and their infrastructure to startups. They've worked with several startups in the past, Vivid Money among them. It makes sense. Maybe that's a field of business they're expecting to grow in the future. It's all about priorities, right?
When they first opened up, and I read Anne Boden's book, one of the things that she said that really stuck with me was that people in the UK are more likely to get married and divorced sooner than they are to change banks. So Anne wanted to change that. Anne Boden, the founder of Starling, she wanted to launch something that would be new, fresh, innovative, rich with products that would encourage people to change banks. Now it feels like Starling have gone full circle and are relying on people not switching, offering an easy access savings account that's pretty basic, and it took them bloody ages to launch that. Still no credit card, no real cashback system. You know, there's nothing new, there's nothing innovative anymore, and it feels like they're going to focus on Engine by Starling and just be content with the amount of customers that they currently have and hope that they get divorced before they leave Starling.
Yeah, you might be right. I mean, it's obviously disappointing from a consumer perspective, right? We all value innovation. We all find it exciting to have fintech products coming up with different services. If it makes sense from a business perspective, I don't know, right? And I believe, it's a free market, right? So if they believe it makes sense for them to invest their resources into this new product, into this B2B market, then, well, good luck. But my point is that we just can't evaluate this fairly, Jonny. Us as outsiders, right, who have basically no idea of the market. We can just say that obviously for consumers it's disappointing.
Yeah,
and
they are obviously rolling the dice. I think they're rolling the dice a little bit. You know, they're spending money on this Engine by Starling and hoping that it pays off.
Maybe it needs that with Revolut growing exponentially. Maybe that's just what it needs. Maybe they just have no chances to become the dominant player in the B2C segment. They understand that, and therefore they're trying to bet on this B2B market now.
I could go on and on about this, but I actually genuinely think they are positioned to be better and more successful than Revolut. They're a fully authorized bank. I think they have a fantastic reputation. Customer service is, in my experience, extremely good at Starling. And I think they're positioned almost, and I've said this before, with the image of a legacy bank, but with the nimbleness of a fintech. All they need to do is to improve the easy access interest rates, to launch a new credit card, to offer some type of cashback incentive, just to try to encourage people to look at this and go, oh, okay, this is better than that, this is better than that. But I can't see any reason why I wouldn't use Chase UK, I wouldn't use Trading 212 as my spending card, why I wouldn't use my Amex credit card. There's no reason why I would want to use Starling Bank. And that, I think, I know what you're saying. I completely agree. Like, Engine by Starling will probably be more successful than, consumer facing banking. You're probably right. Time will tell. But one day in the future, they will maybe have a really successful B2B arm, but a failing consumer facing arm. And they'll be like, oh, shit. We're heavily weighted on the B2B market. And now look, Revolut are doing a B2B SaaS product as well. We can't compete with them because they've got this strong revenue driver in their consumer facing bank. I just wish that they would offer more. You've got a really good reputation, a good brand. Offer more, Starling. Do better. Briefly mention Trading 212 there, Jan. Something I just want to mention as we come to the end of this episode is Trading 212 have increased their cashback. I don't know if you saw this, Jan. We were just talking about 0.5% cashback being quite compelling. Well, it's now 1%. They're offering 1% cashback, but they've reduced the cap. It's no longer £20, but £15. I just wanted to get that in for anyone that's using Trading 212. It's quite nice that you can now earn 1% cashback.
It's still an advantage for most of the users, right? Because they, like, how many people actually hit that ceiling? Let's be realistic. I mean, got to spend quite a lot every month if you want to hit it.
We just saw we didn't just see, to be fair, it was a while back now, but a reduction in interest rates here in the UK by 0.25. The Bank of England are meeting again on the 19th of June. I think it's important to mention this before I talk about interest rates here in the UK, because these rates could drastically change from the 19th of June. To be fair, they're entirely variable, so they could change day to day. But here we go. So easy access savings at the moment, right at the top, we have Atom Bank with 4.75%. It's a minimum deposit of £0 as well. That's the best easy access rate at the moment, 4.75% from Atom Bank. Chip are second best at the moment with 4.56, minimum deposit of £1. And if you want a well-known brand, Spanish bank Santander, their Kahoot brand is offering 4.55%. I did have a 5% Kahoot easy access savings account. I've said this before. The experience was terrible. I mentioned this last time, but if you wanted to reset your account, your password, they'd send you a letter. So just to warn you, Kahoot, it's pretty archaic, but something like Chip that's got like a really strong reputation, it's app-based, they're offering 4.56%. There's fixed rate savings, so you're going to fix the rate, it's guaranteed, but this is a 1-year fix. I'm not going to give you a list of fixes, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, because the interest rates aren't that compelling. Easy access cash ISAs, so you can deposit up to 20 grand right now, tax free. Plum have 4.85%, minimum deposit of £100, and Chip 4.82. Trading 212 have 4.81%. And then finally, fixed rate cash ISAs. So you can lock the money in. There will be a penalty for access. Tax free. Virgin Money have 4.27%. That's 1-year fix, and Santander 4.1%, although that is a minimum deposit of £500.
Being someone that has the majority of his savings in euro and US dollar, I'm quite jealous of the interest rates that you guys have there. So I'd be curious as well if there are people in the audience that are interested in learning more about interest rates within the Eurozone. Please feel free to let us know. I can also cover these in our monthly recap in a frequent update.
So in next week's episode, I want to talk about something here in the UK, the Yonder credit card. I was using it in Sicily. I was testing it. Really interesting. You can earn Yonder points. There's some really compelling experiences and offers that they have inside the app. And I just loved the way it operated and how seamless it was. And I want to share my experience with you on next week's episode. And if you want to support Jan and I, the best thing to do is like the video, like the podcast, and subscribe.
Thanks everyone for listening. It's been a pleasure, Jonny. And starting now, we'll be on weekly again, right?
Absolutely. We'll see you next week.
See you next week, everyone.